Yes. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Salatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa ala rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasana wa fil akhirati hasana wa qina adhaban nar. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakumullah khairan for coming out on a Friday evening to study the tafsir, or to hear a little bit on the tafsir of the Quran. I'm just trying to figure out how to set this mic up. Maybe I can just talk like this. How's that? Yes? Okay. I think we don't need like a inshallah khair. All right. So what I was going to request from everybody, I was in preparation of this tafsir, I was listening to a lecture by Sheikh Salman Al-Auda, may Allah free him. And the first question he asked in the lecture, which made me ask this question of you, is how many of you read the surah before you came here? And in the class, nobody raised his hand. He said, okay, today I'll let it pass, but next week if you come, then I'm going to consider you to be unserious students. So I'm not going to say that to you all, but it's funny that I was going to ask the question, how many have you read the Surah Abasa, right? And if you've read it, have you read its translation? And I think the general idea is quite well known because it's a very famous incident in the life of the Prophet ﷺ. But just a show of hands, have you read or studied anything about this surah previously? Surah Abasa, surah number 80 of the Quran. Just if you're comfortable. MashaAllah, Salman has. Okay. So its context is actually quite interesting. In the books of tafsir, you find that this is one of those surahs that is quite, like there is a consensus around why this was revealed. There are certain surahs, there is a consensus, or certain passages, everybody agrees that's what happened. The first part of Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq, everybody agrees this is the first revelation, and it was because the Prophet ﷺ was in Ghar Hira, and that was the context of this revelation. And other times, for example, like إِذَا جَاءَ نَصْرُ اللَّهِ وَالْفَتْحِ, there is a large broad consensus. This is like in the last 90 or so days of the Prophet ﷺ's life, right? So there is parts of the Quran where everybody agrees this is when it happened and this is why it happened. And there are other parts where there are multiple views. Surah Abasa is of the latter, right? It's of the earlier part, the one that there is a consensus on why this was being revealed. The surah begins with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying, Abasa wa tawalla, he frowned and turned away, an ja'ahu al-a'ma. Why would he do that? Because the blind man approached him. This is the context. The Prophet ﷺ frowned and turned away because the blind person came. This is a description of the context. Now the full picture of it is that the Prophet ﷺ was giving da'wah to the major leaders of Quraysh, what's called akabir, the people who are, every clan had a leader. A clan would be like a large family, right? If you think of people who have many cousins and second cousins, right? And then if you can trace it back to one person, right? One common ancestor. Generally in the Meccan society, that person, if they were older or influential or had done something important, would become the leader of that extended family. And this is called the Qabila is Quraysh, and then the Banu, the clan is the subset of it. So he was speaking to a number of the heads of these clans. And the idea is that these people, they follow their leader to the T. If the leader says, we're going to war, they don't even ask why. Like, okay, when, right? If the leader says, we are going to not fight in this battle that's taking place, even if they have disagreements, they are not going to disobey the head of the family. This was the system in Mecca, okay? And this was a system of governance and a system of a type of a safety net that that would be provided by these clan systems. Governance, because essentially the head of the clan is like a minister, right? They have authority, and from the perspective of a safety net, no one can come and do anything harmful to the member of the clan, and if they did, then the whole clan would unite against them, right? So this is how this society was structured. Very, very different than how we are today. If you are a person today, largely in a country where there is basic freedoms and basic rights are available, you don't need a family or you don't need the Godfather to protect you, right? You have to be in a more sinister type of a situation to require that, right? You have the rule of law protecting you, right? We can travel anywhere largely without much fear, right? Of course, it's different for people who are from different parts of the world, but I'm talking about our current state and our current situation. Very different from that time. So the Prophet ﷺ was speaking to these heads of families, and essentially if a head of a family accepts Islam, then all of them will accept Islam. And if one of them says no, then nobody would publicly say, I accept. They could privately do it, they would hide it, they would deny it, but they could not publicly go against the leader of the clan. So that was the people the Prophet ﷺ had an audience with. And this is a difficult audience for the Prophet ﷺ to get, because these people did not want to entertain the idea that someone else now is going to take their authority away, right? Because this power and authority, the moment you say, okay, you are Rasulullah, we accept that, that's it, you have forfeited that. In reality, that's not what happened. The Prophet, there was a new structure of authority that came out of merit. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq was not from a great clan, but he became the most important person in the history of this ummah after Rasulullah ﷺ because of his merits, because of his sacrifice, because of his his ability to be the first, right? The first to do anything. Okay, Umar radiallahu anhu was also not from a great clan. Okay, he was from a small clan, and he rose. He became the leader of the superpower of the world when he was the Khalifa. Right? This was at the time of Umar radiallahu anhu, the Muslims were able to defeat the Roman Empire, right, in the Battle of Yarmouk, and then they were able to crush the Persian Empire in the Battle of Qadisiyah, and also later on in the Battle of Nahawand, right? Like basically, like that was the end of the Sassanid Empire, and this was a very difficult thing. Historians projected that these two empires fought each other and they were ripe for the picking. To be honest, they were very honed militarily because they had fought so much that they were prepped to fight more wars. It was actually the brilliance of Khalid bin Walid and many other great generals that were there that they completely blew them away, right? But at that point in history, the most important person in the world was Umar radiallahu anhu, the one who took down the two empires that stood as the superpowers for all these years. Came from a very secondary or tertiary tribe or clan of Quraysh. Not anyone who could ever aspire to be the leader of Makkah, let alone the leader of the world, right? So the new order of what became was actually more out of merit, and these people were afraid that they're going to lose their power. And interestingly, those who came with power, like Abu Sufyan, despite being a person of immense baggage, because he fought Rasulullah for 20 years, right? Like, so sure, you accept Islam, but you're not going to now be at the same level as Umar and Uthman, right? But he was given a stature, he was given a rank that, it wasn't just like a foot soldier. He wasn't demoted to that point, right? Rasulullah ﷺ respected the ranks of the people who accepted Islam that previously were important. So he ﷺ was not like this, but these people thought the moment they would accept Islam, that's it. Their authority is completely finished, and they have ceded all power to him. So they did not want to meet him, but here he has an audience with them. Okay, and in some books of tafsir you find that these people were just doing this to humiliate the Prophet ﷺ. They were going to pretend to listen to him and then just laugh at him or something. There was like a planned, it was like a staged meeting. It wasn't really real, right? But that's you can say one way or the other. The point is they were in the room, and Rasulullah ﷺ genuinely felt he has an opportunity now to convey Islam to a number of people. Now, he is in the middle of his da'wah, and as he's doing so, the man who is described in this ayah, the blind man, he enters. What is the name of the blind man? Yes. Abdullah ibn Ummi Maktoum, right? Jazakallah khair, mashallah. And he is the man who enters here, and he is someone who cannot see, right? So he doesn't know who is in the audience and what is happening, right? And he is actually one of the earliest converts to Islam. He accepted Islam quite a while ago. Radiallahu anhu, he was related to Khadija radiallahu anha. I think he was her cousin or second cousin. They were from the same extended family. And even before Islam, he was someone that was close to the Prophet ﷺ. And then he, of course, heard about the messenger of the Prophet being a prophet and having received revelation. He accepted Islam very quickly, and he was a man of great stature. In our history, he was the second muezzin. Right, the first muezzin was Bilal. The second one was Abdullah ibn Maktoum. In fact, to the point where Abdullah ibn Maktoum would give the adhan for Fajr. Now you would say, how can a person who cannot see the horizon give adhan for Fajr? Right? So the Prophet ﷺ actually appointed a man to sit with Abdullah, and that man would look at the horizon, and when it would be time for Fajr, he would tell Abdullah, okay Abdullah, get up and give the adhan. Right? So he was a man of importance. And when Rasulullah ﷺ would leave Medina for a battle or for any type of travel where they're all traveling together, oftentimes the person who would stay behind and lead the salah in the masjid and be the acting mayor of Medina, if you want to call that, would be Abdullah ibn Maktoum. And not only did he act in this manner without having the ability to see, he actually went and fought in battles. Obviously they will not send him to the front line, that would be cruel, right? But he was always present in the back lines, and he would be encouraging people, and he would be tending to the wounded or supporting in whatever way he could, boosting the morale of the people. And subhanallah, he died in Qadisiyah. Subhanallah, right? He was martyred in Qadisiyah all these years later, as the Muslim ummah is about to reach its peak. That is when Abdullah ibn Ummi Maktoum finally met his Lord. And subhanAllah, what an amazing trajectory, that here he was in the Quran mentioned when really nobody believed in Rasulullah ﷺ. It was maybe a handful of people, and of those handful, maybe 5 important people. Okay, the rest were not important from a perspective of the city of Mecca, its politics, its economics, right? They were all just on the peripheries, right? And now when he's about to pass away, martyred, this is the beginning of the Muslim Ummah's reign as a superpower of the world, right? So subhanAllah, what a life he saw, right? How it went from the beginnings all the way to its peak. So Abdullah ibn Ummi Maktoum was this person who came in, and he said, Ya Rasulullah, alimni mimma allamak Allah. Oh Rasulullah, teach me from what Allah has taught you. And as he was saying that, Rasulullah ﷺ, he frowned, and he tawalla, he turned away, right? Now there is 2 words in the Quran to turn away. There is tawalla and there is a'rada. A'rada is more like you are turning full body, right? If I was sitting on a chair that swivels, I would swivel away from you and I would have done i'rad of you. I have basically done a 180, and you, instead of you seeing my face, you are seeing my back, right? Tawalla is more like a a half turn or something, right? So it's not like the Prophet of ﷺ was not completely turning his back to this person, right? He was turning towards the people he was speaking, like, because he turned to look at the person who came, and then he was turning to the people he was speaking, right? And he frowned for obvious reasons. Reason number one, he was interrupted, but that's not that maybe the primary reason. He was interrupted many times when he spoke. More importantly, he is speaking, and he was interrupted when he was speaking to the people who, if they accept Islam, then hundreds, if not thousands, would accept Islam. And in those families, there were people already who were Muslim. They had to conceal the Islam, right? So even for their sake, this was very important. Yes. So that interruption and that situation being compromised is why he frowned. And also why he frowned, as mentioned by some of the ulama, is that he knew the sight of Abdullah ibn Maktoum was essentially the end of this conversation. Because the people of Makkah were very dismissive of people who were lower than them in stature, economically or socially, and the Prophet ﷺ was perhaps hoping that the power of the message would overpower the narcissism that was there and eventually overcome it, right? But it couldn't happen the other way. They couldn't have seen him and then heard the message, him being Abdullah ibn Maktoum. So he also perhaps frowned because he knew this conversation is not over. The moment they saw Abdullah, and the moment they would say, he and us are in the same room, in fact you will say he is superior or more senior to us, this is done, we're not interested, right? So those were some reasons provided of why he ﷺ frowned. Now, there's a few things that are very interesting here, right? Sheikh Salman, in fact, like when he was talking about this, he said that you could spend many hours extrapolating lessons out of this just particular moment in time. When it comes to priorities, when it comes to weighing pros and cons of situations, when it comes to how we are to present Islam, when it comes to how we are to how we see people and we value people, right? Like who's valuable, who's not. This is something that, like even today, like if you, I used to be on the board of the masjid in London, and I used to be at the masjid as one of the directors of religious affairs, and oftentimes in our conversations, the important person who would sit at the table that was next to the stage and the fundraising dinner was not the person who was praying Fajr in the masjid, was not the person who we would say has like an Islamic merit, but the person who had a nice history of donating money, right? Nothing wrong with that. We were trying to honor this person for their donations, but the valuation was purely based on what? How much can they donate? And again, there's no personal motive here. Like the board members are all volunteers, they don't take any money, okay? We're just all trying to raise as much as possible for the masjid, right? But we are even today valuing people on the size of their bank accounts and how comfortable they are in writing a check, yes? And the question is, how do you value people? Who is more valuable? Abdullah ibn Maktoum or Utbah ibn Rabi'a? Utbah, if accepts Islam, then everybody accepts Islam, right? Is he more valuable? And Utbah actually eventually was very convinced of Islam, never accepted Islam. But of course, he is nothing compared to Abdullah ibn Maktoum. So there's a lot of interesting things there, and I'll try to just quickly go in order. Abasa wa tawalla an ja'ahu al-a'ma. Number one, how do we, as the first, just a big picture here, Rasulullah did not say anything to Abdullah ibn Maktoum. He did not even make it known to him that this was something that he felt. He only found out about this when the ayah was recited to him. Yes, number one. Number two, the Prophet ﷺ frowning and turning away is not something that it's not an indictment of Abdullah ibn Maktoum. It's more actually of at the sadness of the opportunity lost. He knew that opportunity was now gone to have hundreds, if not thousands, accept Islam, right? And he was right, because it took many years and many battles for this thing to flush out over the course of these years. And the frustration of Rasulullah was always in that he knew there are people who like what the message is saying, like Utbah, right? He knows that, and Utbah expressed that many times, like his uncle Abu Talib, right? Who not only liked the message, he wrote poetry about how this message is the truth. That he would say to Rasulullah ﷺ, وَلَقَدْ عَلِمْنَا أَنَّ ابْنَنَا لَا مُكَذَّبٌ لَدَيْنَا وَلَا يُعْنَى بِقَوْلِ الْأَبَاطِلِ. He's like, we know our son, Rasulullah ﷺ, is not a liar. And he only says things that are factual. We know what he's saying is the truth. Right? And he would say things like, if this was not that people would say you are just doing this to just to follow your just to make your nephew happy, right? If it was not لولا ملامة الناس, if it was not that people would criticize me, right? I would make you very happy by accepting Islam. So he had no objection to Islam necessarily, right? From an ideological perspective, the idea made sense to him. He had no qualms about Rasulullah being who he was, right? But just the fear of the perception of people held him back, right? So Rasulullah knew there's people in this audience and many others who have the same sentiments. And if that barrier is removed, the fear or the Islam being like a pariah religion or something, right? If that is removed, then people will very happily accept it on its merits, right? So that was very also a deeply difficult thing for Rasulullah ﷺ to bear. And if you study the Quran and you spend some time studying the Meccan era, you will find that Rasulullah ﷺ took this very hard, right? The Quran describes this on multiple occasions. فَلَعَلَّكَ تَارِكُمْ بَعْضَ مَا يُوحَى إِلَيْكَ. Perhaps you are going to abandon what's been revealed to you. وَضَائِقٌ بِهِ صَدْرُكَ. And your heart is constricted, meaning you are feeling the weight of this. You are feeling like, am I doing something wrong? And is that why people are not accepting this? Is it my fault? Right? In Surah Hijr, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَقَدْ نَعْلَمُ إِنَّهُ لَيَحْزُنُكَ الَّذِي يَقُولُونَ. He says that we know for a fact that it hurts you what they say. Sorry, that's not in Surah Nahl, excuse me. He says, وَلَقَدْ نَعْلَمُ أَنَّكَ يَضِيقُ صَدْرُكَ بِمَا يَقُولُونَ. Excuse me. He says that we know that it makes your heart, it makes your heart constricted, meaning it hurts you. It's something that is unpleasant for you, that these people reject you, what they say about the religion. It really cuts deep. So Rasulullah ﷺ was someone who took this in a manner that he carried this burden, right? So he was also worried from that perspective. That's what Abasa wa Tawalla is referring to. He frowned and turned away. That's the whole context. The second thing that's interesting here is Anja'ahu al-A'ma is the blind man, right? Al-A'ma is the blind man. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not name people in the Quran except a few, right? He names obviously prophets of Allah, but of the non-prophets he names Fir'aun, and he names Qarun and Haman. He names some of the the chief villains of the time of Bani Israel. So he names some, right? But generally there is no naming, right? In fact, there is a man, Hatib ibn Abi Balta' radiallahu anhu, who committed treason. He committed treason. What did he do? Rasulullah, when he was about to, he planned a sneak invasion of Makkah. Not invasion, it was basically he wanted to overwhelm the people of Makkah, and then basically the leaders would have no choice but to give in to the will of the people, because the people of Makkah were secretly mostly Muslim at that point. He wanted to just arrive with a huge army and just completely make it untenable, and he wanted to do this very secretly. And then Hatib wrote a letter telling the people of Makkah he's coming, right? And he did that not because he was a munafiq or something. This is from the people who fought in the Battle of Badr. It's because he had his family were essentially in a compromised situation in Makkah, and that was the deal he had with the people of Makkah. It was a huge mistake, yes. And some Sahaba got very angry. Some of them were saying that this is an act of treason and this person should be killed. But Rasulullah ﷺ, of course, did not do that. And the Quran was revealed. Surah Mumtahina was revealed. And the first part of Surah Mumtahina speaks about this particular incident. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not name Hatib. He does not even let it be understood or implied that it was one person. He says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu la tattakhidhu aduwwi wa aduwwakum awliya. O believers, do not offer friendship to those who are enemies of mine and yours. A group of people. Yes? Only from the history and the seerah and the tafsir do we know that actually this is one person who did it. And this is what they did, and this is why they did it. Right? So this is the habit of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, that He does not make it about a person, He talks about the situation. Al-A'ma is here kind of like a middle ground. The description is quite obvious, the blind person, right? That is not a negative description. You would think about it, right? In old Arabic, in 7th century Arabia, and even afterwards, they would describe a person that we would sometimes maybe find offensive, but they were tried not to being offensive. Like, for example, there's a great scholar, his name is A'mash, or he's known as A'mash, excuse me. His name is actually, I think his name is Abu Muhammad Sulaiman, I think so. Anyway, he was a great muhaddith, but he was blind, right? And because he was a blind muhaddith, the people called him the blind sheikh, right? Basically. So it was not meant to be a type of a, it's not meant to be a diss, okay? You would have people who had a limp, and they would just describe this person as an Aarij, right? The person with the limp. Not as a derogatory or a title to debase the person, it's just a description of how they are, okay? So Al-A'ma here is not a debasing of Abdullah bin Maktoum, it's a description of who he is, and that is the most visible part of his, or the most apparent part of his persona, that he is someone who cannot see. And when he comes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا يُدْرِيكَ لَعَلَّهُ يَزَّكَّى أَوْ يَذَّكَّرُ فَتَنْفَعُهُ الذِّكْرَى. He says something very interesting. He says, what would make you know that he might seek to purify himself, or that he may take heed and derive benefit from the warning? Rasulullah is being asked, how do you know that وَمَا يُدْرِيكَ, like what makes you, like how could you be certain that Utbah and these leaders are going to be better recipients of the message than Abdullah ibn Maktoum? How could you be certain of that? You can't be. That's your assumption, right? How can you be certain that أَوْ يَذَّكَّرُ فَتَنْفَعُ الذِّكْرَى, even after receiving the message, that there would be a purification? How can you be certain that Utbah would be someone who would purify their soul, let go of this narcissism, let go of this egotistical worldview? How can you be certain of that versus Abdullah ibn Maktoum? The Prophet is told and is taught a very important lesson by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Amma man istaghna. As for the one who considers themselves to be of no need, like they are no need of anything. They're not in need of you, they're not in need of the message, They are completely independent and they feel they're self-sufficient. For that person, فَأَنْتَ لَهُ تَصَدَّى, you give them complete and full attention. وَمَا عَلَيْكَ أَلَّا يَزَّكَّى, and it is not upon you, i.e. that is not, it is not your responsibility to change their mind. It's not your responsibility that they change their behavior. وَأَمَّا مَنْ جَاءَكَ يَسْعَى, and as for the one who came to you striving, وَهُوَ يَخْشَى, and he fears Allah, فَأَنْتَ عَنْهُ تَلَهَّى, from you are distracted from that person. Talaha from the word lahu. Lahu is to take something and render it meaningless or of less importance. Okay, the life of this world is described in the Quran in many places. وَمَا هَذِهِ الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا إِلَّا لَعِبٌ وَلَهُ. The life of this world is amusement and things that are not that important in the big picture, right? Things that seemed important to us when we were kids, a few years later or even a few months later don't seem important, and now in later stages of life you don't even remember it. Yes, and as time passes by, those things that happen to us that in the moment were very important, you would be shocked if you remembered most of them, if any of them, because this is the nature of life. Things happen and just wither and fade away. That's lahu, something that is just fading away and just has no actual substance to keep it in one place, right? This is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes life. It's very interesting. SubhanAllah, like if you, I was listening to or reading something from a person who was reflecting on bodies of river, or bodies of water, like a river or a stream, right? And it's a very fascinating thing if you look at it. It's just constantly moving, just endless movement, non-stop, right? And that is in a way a metaphor of life, right? Like time just keeps moving, and if say like you had like a bruise or something, or if you had like a small gash or something, and if you stood in this water, the water will wash away your gash, and eventually just that the blood will stop seeping out of your body, right? It's just that that water will just wash it away. Anything that's there, it will get passed down the stream, sediments, rocks, whatever have you. This is like a metaphor for life. فَأَنْتَ عَنْهُ تَلَهَّى, like it just becomes less and less important as time passes by. The water is like the time here, and everything else is talaha. It just ceases to have any value, even if it remains, right? So that's the word that Allah uses to describe. فَأَنْتَ عَنْهُ تَلَهَّى, you think that this person is, you take them for granted. You take this person for granted. They should not be taken for granted. They should not be, because they are the one who are coming with real interest, and they have a real desire, and their spirituality is in the right place. They fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the person who your focus should be on, not the one who you don't know what's going to be the outcome, right? So this is an interesting framing, that the thing, the expression is like, the bird in hand is better than two in the bush, right? Or something that's certain is more reliable and you can build on it than something that's a assumption, right? Something that's factual is more valuable than some assumptions and things that are not factual, or something you cannot build upon. This idea is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to convey to Rasulullah, that you don't know how this person will react, but you know for a fact that this person is going to react in a positive way. Why would you take them for granted? In fact, the one who you know for a fact are going to respond well, you should give them more of your attention, more of your consideration, not the other way. This is a very interesting thing. If you think about what Rasulullah ﷺ said later on in his life, he says, خَيْرُكُمْ the best of you are those who are the best to their families, right? And you would say, well, you could take your family for granted because they're your family, they're not going anywhere, right? And people would maybe act in a manner that they would try to be more courteous, kinder, gentler, a better, outward-facing look than an inward-facing look, because they take the people who are inside the house for granted. They're not going anywhere, right? But that's wrong, because the person who's inside your house, they are not only from your own flesh and blood, but they are known commodities. You know who they are, you know what they're about, you've seen them all of your life, or they've seen you all of their lives. That's not the person, or those are not the people that you take for granted. Those are the people you give your best to. You double down on them and give them all that you can. And it doesn't mean that it's one or the other, but if you have to focus and choose, you choose on the thing that is a known commodity. And this is something that I was reading this about, say like you are speaking to an audience, right? And like when I read this book a while ago, because at that time audience would just be like in a group of people in a room, but now audience is like people online and people you don't even know, right? The idea was that if you are to you have about like this is like a shape of a bell curve. Like there's like a chunk in the middle that are open and they're receptive, and then there's like a chunk on the side that they don't care what you have to say. They will hate you. And there's a chunk on the other side that they don't care what you say, they will love you. Right? The point is that what do you focus on? And the person's hypothesis here was you focus on those who actually love you and you double down on them, and then the majority, the chunk in the middle that is open to influence or open to being influenced will actually sway towards you. Instead of trying to win over the haters, you will actually lose your followers, and the people in the middle will not care for you either. The focus should be on those who are readily willing listeners to you, and that actually would sway everybody else in your direction. It's a very interesting perspective, right? And they're not coming from a Quranic angle, they're just talking about psychology or stats or whatnot. But it's the same concept that أَمَّا مَنْ جَاءَكَ يَسْعَى وَهُوَ يَخْشَى فَأَنْتَ عَنْهُ تَلَاهَا. The person who is a known commodity, they are coming to you happily, they are fearing Allah. Why would you take them for granted? Why won't you give them all of that attention? It's not a fact that these other people will accept Islam. It's not a guarantee that they would take Islam the way you want it, the way you're preaching it, right? Because they would say, yeah, okay, how about one day we worship the idols and one day we worship Allah. That was the compromise that Quraysh proposed when the Prophet ﷺ got very powerful, right? Without having any governance, right? For them, this is like a transactional situation, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to highlight that. The other thing also is that what He's trying to highlight is the results are not the responsibility of anyone, right? The results are in the hands of Allah. What's in the control of a person is effort and what they can do. And this applies to a number of things. It applies to things such as personal growth. Some people are born and they have an easier time being calm, collected. Others are a bit more emotional. That's their nature, right? The nurture can provide them some support to, be more collected. But sometimes people are like that. Some people have like a natural anger problem. Like it's like there's remedies for this, not just medication, but like there's remedies that need to be taken here, and others don't have that, right? In terms of the da'wah, in terms of when it comes to, I'm trying to remember what I had this point here, sorry. Yes, excuse me. The idea is that a person who has this kind of rugged nature, and the other one has a softer nature. Your job is not to turn the person who has a rugged nature into a softer nature. Your job is to say, here is the message. Here is what Rasulullah ﷺ said. Here is why this is bad for you. Here is why being kinder and softer and gentler is good for you. Now, whether they do it or not, that's not on you. And if you are that person who are trying to like do it to yourself, you're trying to condition yourself to be a better person, sometimes if you keep failing, the tendency of shaitan is to say, you are beyond help. You're always angry, you're always this, you're always a failure. Right? This is a very deadly trap of shaitan. The Quran warns against, وَلَا تَيْأَسُوا مِنْ رَوْحِ اللَّهِ. Don't ever give up hope of Allah's mercy, of Allah's salvation, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being there for you. Yes? The effort is what's required. Continuously. The result will either come eventually or it won't. That is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's responsibility. That is what He will take care of. What we are being asked about is, like, did you do something about it? If a person has an anger issue, did you do something about it? Whether you changed or not is not the problem, is not the end goal. If a person is raising kids, subhanAllah, every person is different, right? Every child is different. Everyone grows up differently, even if they live in the same house. It's not the responsibility of the parents to mold the children in a particular way. That end result is not in their hands. That is actually entirely in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All really you can do is make dua. But what you can also do is provide the structure that facilitates goodness, right? That teaches accountability, that teaches truth, that encourages truth. That is the thing. The Prophet ﷺ is being taught here, and all of us by extension, to focus on the action, the effort. The end result is absolutely not what you're being judged on. And this is something Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to him again and again and again, فَإِنَّمَا عَلَيْكَ الْبَلَاغُ وَعَلَيْنَا الْحِسَابُ. Your job is to convey, and our job is to hold people accountable and responsible. He even says about the da'wah, which I personally find this to be a very cathartic ayah. He says, وَإِمَّا نُرِيَنَّكَ بَعْضَ الَّذِي نَعِدُهُمْ أَوْ نَتَوَفَّيَنَّكَ فَإِلَيْنَا مَرْجِعُهُمْ. He says, it doesn't matter whether you see the end that you have been promised or you don't. Meaning, it doesn't matter whether you see victory or Rasulullah or you don't see victory. The end result of this is in the hands of Allah. Whether you see it or not is not your concern. Your concern is, can I do something about it? Can I get it to the point where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants it to go? Whether it ends up being Fath Makkah, whether it ends up being the fall of the Roman Empire, whether you see it or not is not your business. And this is really important because, we would consider ourselves as, members of the Ummah. We look at the Muslim world, we see that it's last 100 years or 75 years, it's basically on fire, subhanAllah. And there's so much pain, there's so much suffering, so much darkness. And you say what can I do, right? And it's paralyzing. It's very paralyzing. What the Quran teaches us is the end result, the change that will happen over time is not your concern. Your concern are the steps you can take, the da'wah you can give, the focus on the people who are interested and excited. That's the focus. Not those who you perceive to be important, not actions that, not a single action will not change the world, but small actions will change someone's world, and that is something that the focus should be on. فَأَنْتَ عَنْهُ تَلَاهَا. Also about priorities, this is an important thing. We give da'wah to people who are non-Muslims, it's very important, but just as important, if not more, is taking care of the people inside the faith already, right? Like that should be all of our collective concern. My daughter goes to public school here in Milton, subhanAllah, right? And she came from Islamic school and she was very confused when she went to public school. And I said, what happened? She's like, well, you know, all the Muslim guys have girlfriends. Like, I'm very confused about that. I'm like, okay, thank you for being honest. I appreciate the honesty here, right? But you're just confused. How does this work, right? In reality, that particular classroom's problem is all of our problem. All of us, like this, these are all our kids, right? They're all Muslim kids, and this this collective concern is very important. As Muslims, as people of the da'wah, we must not overlook the problems that are hard within the Muslim community, and try to go for maybe something that's like a easier, more instant gratification, someone accepting Islam. That's actually a really great thing. I'm not belittling it, right? But that is in a way a little easier to do, because maybe that person is a blank slate and the message is strong and they accept. That's great. But the people inside the faith should be more prioritized for us, like, are more of a priority for us, and particularly the ones who are at risk, like these youth, like these young kids who are in a public setting, right, that doesn't have any guardrails, so they can just wander off wherever they want. And this is derived from the fact that Rasulullah ﷺ is directed to not take Abdullah ibn Maktoum as someone for granted, and not to assume that the وَمَا عَلَيْكَ أَلَّا يَزَّكَّى, like the person who is not a Muslim in this context, it's not your responsibility. You convey the message, that's it. Now it's them. Now they have to make their own choice. Whereas the one who's already a Muslim, you should be reminding them again and again and again and again. Right? So this is one other thing that Shaykh Salman, for example, was mentioning. And again, it's not to belittle da'wah or people who do da'wah to non-Muslims. So that's a very important aspect. But the harder problem to solve is the problem of the grade 8 Muslim kids who are all having girlfriends, right? They're telling them to like stop that and to act better, inshallah. So this is something that some thoughts around this amazing incident that took place in the life of Rasulullah ﷺ, that this is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught him a lesson that is a timeless lesson. It's recited over the course of his life, and it will be recited all the way until the end of time, wherein the perception of who's important should not cloud our judgments. That is the core message here. What is important is a person has a particular commitment to Islam, like Abdullah bin Maktoum, and that should be not tolerated, that should be celebrated. And if somebody feels that is out of place, that is not our problem, that is their problem. And this is something that Rasulullah ﷺ was told. And then he says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we'll end with this passage, كَلَّا إِنَّهَا تَذْكِرَةٌ. These verses are a reminder. فَمَنْ شَاءَ ذَكَرَ. Whoever wills, let them remember it, or let them take heed from it. The idea is, here is the message. You like to accept it, your choice. You don't want to accept it, you will be the one who will face the consequences. It's a very it's a very clear guideline here, right? Like, we're not going to bend over backwards for someone to accept the message. We are not going to modify the message. Here it is. If your heart inclines to it, if your mind is ready to figure out how this is logically and spiritually the best course of action, then فَمَنْ شَاءَ ذَكَرَ. But if it's not, then that is something that you would have to answer for. فِي صُحُفٍ مُكَرَّمَةٍ. It is an honored records, مَرْفُوعَةٍ مُطَهَّرَةٍ, that are exalted and purified, in the hands of messenger angels that are kiramim barara, noble and beautiful. These ayat is a description of the the original Quran, the Quran that is in Lawh al-Mahfuz, how it is a exalted book, how it is something that is protected and it is in the hands of those who are highly raised, like they're exalted and they're purified. The idea is that the book, when implemented, brings these characteristics to all people. It will exalt the person that someone thinks is completely useless, to the point that they are the acting mayor of Medina and they die on the battle of Qadisiyah. Right? It will exalt people like that. It will purify people from the worst situation. Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahl was the son of Abu Jahl, Ikrimah, right? Radiallahu anhu. He accepted Islam. And he died a shaheed. I think he was in the Syrian campaign. I forget which battle it was. But he died in the hands of his friend Khalid bin Walid. Right? And here is a person who most of their life not only were rejecting Rasulullah, were fighting Rasulullah. Right? He was actively combating against Rasulullah ﷺ. And the message purified them to the point where they died in the highest rank as a martyr. Right? So this is what the message is supposed to do. It's supposed to exalt and purify, and it doesn't matter what the person, where the person came from, or what kind of mistakes they made. This is what the message represents. فَمَنْ شَاءَ ذَكَرَهُ. Whoever wants to accept it, you are welcome to accept it. This is the first half of Surah, or maybe the first third of Surah Abasa, and I'll stop here. We'll continue the rest after that, inshallah, because the sentences will then be broken. I don't want to break them, inshallah. Questions, comments we can take now. Jazakumullah khair for coming on again on Friday. I appreciate you all, and my apologies for being a little late, but feel free, inshallah, to share your thoughts. I have a friend. This guy is a big time hunter, mashallah. This guy went to. I'll end with a funny story. So this guy hunts all types of game, turkey, grouse, mashallah, very skilled, right? And he went and he does very well. And when the whole situation was happening in Palestine, he's also very excitable person, a person who has who goes around and hunts game. They're also emotionally charged. They're like, should we do something? I was like, no, brother, you don't do anything. Keep your weapons under lock. Right? So action is important, but action must be taken with wisdom as the Quran dictates, and not just emotionally spurred. Right? Definitely not that type of action. But I thought of that story because the emotions that were in play here that resulted, and as the seerah books describe, is that the Kibar of Quraysh started laughing. Right? They started laughing the moment Abdullah ibn Maktoum asked the question, "Allimni ya Rasulullah, mimma allamak Allah." They started laughing. They're like, oh, look at this. Right? Can you imagine now the embarrassment and the emotional strain that puts on a person, right? But the regulation of that is part of da'wah, right? And subhanAllah, I wanted to just end on that anecdote, inshallah. I know time for Maghrib is close, so we'll conclude, inshallah. I don't think there's any questions or comments, but inshallah next time we'll have some other questions, hopefully. Jazakumullah khairan, subhanakallahumma bihamdika, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.